Thanks, Ms. Hasty. A couple of questions. You were talking about specific data that you were referencing when you were speaking with another member. Are they the Bureau of Labor Statistics that you're referring to, or Department of Labor stats? What were you looking at as far as your statistics?
The Federal Department of Labor.
Okay, so Department of Labor. So in that, did you notice that part of the difference in earnings has to do with the amount of time spent on the job? Did you notice that anywhere? Per day, let's say, which would add up to per week, per month,
I'm not
per year?
sure what you mean by time spent.
Well, I mean, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, men spend an average of 8.14 hours per day on the job. Women, 7.75 hours per day on the job. That's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that I believe you're referencing. That explains alone a quarter, 25% of the wage gap right there. Did you see that in any of the statistics that you were referencing?
I didn't see that, but that's still, even agreeing with you, there's still a significant gap.
There is a significant gap. We can get to that in a little bit, but that right there eliminates 25%.
Well, no, let me clarify that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm agreeing with you. If I take what you're saying.
Well, it's interesting that you take whatever you're saying is gospel, but when I'm reading from the same statistics, you just choose to ignore that part of it, or you just didn't see that part of it in the stats.
Well, no, I'm not going to agree with a statistic that says that men work longer than women.
Even though it comes from the same statistics you're referencing.
I didn't see that.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So we should take at your word whatever you're saying to us from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but when faced with a whole bunch of other stats that you choose to ignore, we should just ignore those.
Well, I'm pretty confident in the federal labor statistics.
As am I. That's why I'm reading a direct quote that says men work an average of 8.14 hours per day, women 7.75 hours a day. That alone explains 25% of the wage gap that you are talking about.
I don't have those statistics. So
okay, but I do, so there you go. There's 25% right there. Part of my issue with this, as we've talked about, equal pay for equal work, the law of the land since the year I was born in 1963. Would you say, clearly you must think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that that's working or not working?
I don't believe it's working because, again, you have to prove substantially equal, which is a very high burden.
So we have to prove substantially equal, which is seemingly a high bar, but equivalent, this nebulous equivalence that we throw out there, that's easy to define? Equivalent work is somehow easy to define? But equal, that's simple. Same work, same pay. If I'm flying an airplane and I'm a man, I get paid the same as a woman. That's equal.
It's a step in the right direction. We're asking the Department of Labor to recommend to employers to use working conditions, skills, effort, and responsibilities in determining pay.
It's actually
to not use any other discriminating factors.
I would say equal is about as clear as it can get, whereas equivalent enters into all kinds of issues. For example, the categories, right? We're going to now bring in categories of work, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by category.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it. You could have an executive assistant. You could have, well, I'll give you an example. The study that was done brought in under the same category a librarian, a lawyer, professional athlete, quote, media occupations was the other one, under a single rubric called other white collar, right? Because they're all white collar jobs. They brought them in under the same thing for comparison. So this is not saying that a teacher is going to make this much whether they're a man or woman, because that's, again, equal pay, fairly easy to define. This brings in broad categories, does it not?
It's equal and equivalent, but again, we would allow the Department of Labor to come up with the corresponding criteria.
That's where the rub is, actually, letting the government dictate what a private sector employer is going to pay. That's a real problem that I would not view as a step in the right direction. I view it as a step towards socialism and communism.
This bill does not do that, by the way, but...
Yes, it absolutely does. It does.
No, it doesn't.
How does it not let the Department of Labor come in and define what equivalent work is to a private sector employer?
It's not setting wages. It's asking employers to have certain criteria in consideration and not to use discriminatory factors when you determine someone's rate of pay?
Asking them or telling them?
Providing guidance.
Telling them. So, and isn't that already the law, that you cannot discriminate? That's already the law. Multiple times we've already referenced
Yes,
where the law is.
and as I've said before, the difficulty in the burden of having to be substantially equal.
Does your bill, but now you have to be not so substantially equivalent, I guess. Now it's going to be a very broad spectrum of what the government determines, other than the market determining. What the government determines is now equivalent, right?
We've allowed the Department of Labor to monitor other things in terms of wages and employment.
Monitor, but not set. Not set.
Yes.
And if there's a problem,
We're not setting wages.
if there's a problem, the Department of Labor then steps in and fixes the problem, we would hope. Or litigation fixes the problem, we would hope.
Yes.
Okay. Now, is there any acknowledgement in the bill about the differences that occur among job choices? Because historically, and it seems to me like we're trying to just eliminate that and act like they don't exist. But for reasons of society, family needs, things like that, there are times that women gravitate toward a different line of work than men. That's a proven fact. That's not conjecture. They're not forced into it. They may choose to do it knowing that it's going to fit their lifestyle, their family needs, children, things like that, which is why women exit and
Right, but
enter
that
the
doesn't
workforce.
justify an inequity in pay.
Yet, well, no. It doesn't justify an inequity in pay of, let's say, the hourly wage or the salary, but it certainly justifies the difference in wages. And part of what's gone on here, where we're not comparing apples and apples, is we talk about median wages versus a direct comparison between people. That's part of the problem here, is that we kind of have this broad approach to this and say, well, if you are driving a truck and you're a woman and I'm driving a truck and I'm a man, we should just automatically be paid the same. There's some differences that occur because women do exit and enter the workforce. Let me just be specific about that, though. For example, we're talking about kind of the categories. And one of the things I noticed was economics majors. 66% male in that field. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but 66% of male economics majors. The median income there is $70,000, whereas sociology majors, 68% female, $40,000 median salary. Would this bill, in your opinion, maybe you can't answer this one, and that's okay if you can't, but would this bill not sort of group those into the same category and say they should be paid the same?
I wouldn't say that, because skill is one of the determining factors. And someone who's an economics major, their skills are a little different than someone who's a, what did you say, a psychology major?
Well, economics, sociology, for example.
Sociology.
Okay. Okay, so skill is part of it. It's, when you say skill, do you mean quantity or quality of production? Where in the bill does it say skill? Because I didn't quite see that. Could be there.
It's one of the factors that DOL is used to consider.
Okay. All right. So how does the bill address things like family choices, lifestyle? Is it address it at all? It just seems like we're trying to
The bill
eliminate
doesn't cover
all
that, and that's not a discriminatory factor. A family choice is not a discriminatory factor.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hasty. I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, on the bill.
On the bill, Mr. McLaughlin.
This bill, this whole package of bills, obviously there's been support and opposition to them. It seems to me that we've now moving toward, rather than a market economy, a government-controlled economy where the government's going to dictate once again to very small businesses as small as 4 employees in the state of New York